A loud bang on the door jolted me awake at 7 in the morning. It wasn't the kind of knock someone makes when they come over for coffee. It was commanding, insistent. I put on my flip-flops, ran my hand through my hair, and crossed the living room still half asleep. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to have access to more stories like this. I opened the door and was met by two men standing very straight. The younger one, about 32 years old, was wearing a grey uniform with a silver badge on his chest. The other, looking about 37, was dressed in a suit that was too cheap for an executive, but formal enough to convey authority. "Good morning, Officer Scott, Municipal Zoning Inspector," said the uniformed man, quickly flashing what looked like a badge. "This is Detective Kevin." The man in the suit nodded tersely with his head. "We received a complaint about unauthorized external modifications at this residence," continued Scott, checking his clipboard. "Specifically, changes in the front yard that violate the Municipal Building Code, Section 3.7.a. I frowned. It was true, I had planted some rose bushes and installed a small fountain in the garden over the past few weeks. Nothing that required approval, as far as I knew. "Do you have any official document about this supposed violation?" I asked, still holding the door. "Of course," replied Kevin, finally speaking. "The guidelines are clear. Sir, you are subject to an initial fine of $750, but if you cooperate with us now, we can lower it to $500. I noticed he avoided showing any documentation. Something wasn't right. Scott's badge had been shown way too quickly. Kevin kept his hands in his pockets, seeming uneasy. And no municipal inspector would knock on my door at 7 in the morning to talk about gardens. I took a closer look at Scott's badge. The metal didn't have the characteristic shine of official badges. The uniform also looked off. Too generic. Without the city crest. "Sorry, but I need to see your credentials again, please. This time, take it slow." The two exchanged quick glances. "Sir, this is just a formality," Scott insisted, trying to change the subject. "Our department is doing surprise inspections in the neighborhood. Several neighbors have already received notices." "Which neighbors, exactly?" "We can't disclose that information," said Kevin, sounding a bit irritated. That was when I realized. They weren't inspectors or detectives at all. They were imposters. I smiled to myself. My 15 years as a federal agent working with organized fraud had prepared me to recognize these scams. "Is there a problem?" Scott asked, noticing my hesitation. "None," I replied calmly. "I'm just trying to understand this unusual situation." "I'm going to get my house documents," I said, stepping back inside. "One moment." I shut the door firmly and locked it. I grabbed my cell phone and called Carlos, a 41-year-old colleague from the local police. "Carlos, I have two guys at my door posing as municipal inspectors. Officer Scott and Detective Kevin, from the supposed municipal zoning inspection. Do you know this department? Zoning inspection? That doesn't exist here. We have the Department of Building and Conduct, but no one named Scott or Kevin works there," Carlos replied, alarmed. "And they certainly wouldn't be paying visits at 7 in the morning." "That's what I thought. Can you check for any similar scams happening in the area?" While I waited, I watched through the side window. The two men were talking tensely in the garden, looking around as if they were checking out the house. "I'm checking the system," said Carlos. "Yes, we have records of similar incidents in the last 3 months. Mostly in Hillcrest and Oak Valley. Exactly the most upscale neighborhoods in the area. My house, in Maple Heights, followed the same pattern, high-end condominiums with apparently impeccable security, yet vulnerable to elaborate scams. They try to extort money with fake fines? Yes, but it also looks like a reconnaissance scheme. They identify houses for potential future burglaries, gathering information on routines, security systems. While I was talking with Carlos, I noticed a black car quietly parking on the other side of the street. A young woman, about 25, got out of the vehicle. She was wearing a crisp executive suit and walked with confidence, as if she belonged there. "Carlos, we have a new element. A woman just arrived. Looks like she's part of the group." "That's new." The previous cases mentioned only 2 men. The woman approached the 2 imposters. They spoke briefly, and she handed over something that looked like a folder. The scam was larger and more organized than I had imagined at first. "I'm sending a patrol car, but it'll take about 15 minutes, Carlos informed me. "No, wait. If they see the cops, they'll run. We need to think bigger." The woman then pointed to different parts of the house, scrutinizing it carefully. The trio seemed to be methodically mapping the area. A shiver ran down my spine realizing the sophistication of their operation. "Carlos, I don't just want to catch them red-handed. I want to dismantle the entire operation." "What do you suggest?" "I have reason to believe that these 3 are just the tip of the iceberg. They're likely part of a larger organization that has been systematically targeting upscale residences in the area." While speaking, I was already devising a mental plan. It wouldn't be enough just to defend my house, I needed to act proactively. "We can set up an operation," I continued. "The condominium has cameras at all entrances. Get access to the recordings from the past few weeks. Let's identify their movement patterns. I'll talk to the chief and assemble a team." "Do you have any strategy in mind?" "Yes. I'm going to pretend that I fell for their scam. Set up a meeting to resolve the situation. In the meantime, position agents around. Not only do we catch these 3, but we might also identify other members of the group." I went back to the window. The trio was now moving around the side garden, discreetly taking photos on their cell phones. The woman clearly led the operation, giving instructions to the other 2. "I need to get back outside before they suspect anything," I said. "Assemble the most discreet team possible. No marked patrol cars or uniforms. We're going to act like they do, disguised and methodical." "Understood. I'll be with you in 30 minutes, plainclothes." I took a deep breath. Dozens of families had fallen victim to this scam. It was time to turn the tables. I opened the door again, carrying a folder with random documents to keep up the facade. The trio immediately halted their conversation when they saw me. The suited woman smiled with an artificial cordiality that never reached her eyes. "Sorry for the delay," I said, trying to sound nervous. "I found the house documents. We can talk about this fine now." "Ah, great," said Scott, looking more relaxed. The woman stepped forward. "My name is Hannah Meyer, supervisor for the inspection department," she introduced herself, extending her hand. Her handshake was firm, calculated. "I'm here to make sure we can resolve this situation as efficiently as possible." I noticed she spoke with a subtle accent I couldn't immediately place. Her eyes scanned my face, as if memorizing every detail. "We'll get it sorted, for sure," I replied, leading them to the front yard. "What exactly is the problem with my rose bushes?" Kevin gestured widely to the garden. "This entire arrangement violates Code 3.7.a on landscaping in premium residential areas. The fountain, specifically, should have had prior approval from the Urban Planning Committee." "I see," I murmured, feigning concern. "And how much would it cost to regularize this?" Hannah smiled. "Normally, it would be $750, as mentioned. But," she lowered her voice, "I can reduce it to $500 if we settle it now in cash. That way we avoid the official record bureaucracy." "I don't have that amount at home," I replied. "Could I meet you later, maybe at the municipal office?" The 3 exchanged quick looks that confirmed my suspicions. "Actually," Hannah answered cautiously, "we're on a very tight schedule today. If we can settle now, I could exceptionally reduce it to $400. "There's an ATM at the nearby mall," suggested Scott. "We could accompany you to it." Of course they could. Perfect for a discreet robbery. "I have a better idea," I proposed. "I have a meeting in an hour. I can meet you at the end of the day, say at 4 p.m., at the model house in the condominium. There you can show me examples of gardens that meet the standards. I'll bring the money and we settle everything." Hannah hesitated, clearly not expecting this twist. Finally, she nodded. "Great." 4 p.m. at the model house. After exchanging fake contact information with me, the trio left. I watched them through the window as they got into the woman's car, a black sedan with plates that I was sure would be cloned or tampered with. When I set off the house alarm, my phone buzzed. It was Carlos. "I'm reviewing the condominium camera footage. They've been here 3 times in the last 2 weeks, always at different times. They seem to be mapping out the residents' routines." "Were you able to identify them?" "Partially. The woman drove a different car at each visit. We're cross-referencing with reports of stolen vehicles. The other 2 arrived separately on each occasion. That explained why the scam continued despite the reports. They were methodical, switching cars and probably disguises as well." "I found something else," Carlos continued. "One of our informants mentioned a group operating in the state. They infiltrate luxury condos, identify targets, and then, after the initial extortion, come back for more elaborate burglaries. They've already hit over 40 residences in the last 3 years. That explains the sophistication of their approach," I commented while checking the locks. "I've scheduled a meeting with them at 4 p.m. at the model house." "Perfect. I'm organizing the operation now. We'll have undercover agents positioned around the property from 3 p.m. onwards. I'm going to need a discreet microphone," I requested. "And I want the condominium camera recordings from the past 30 days. Maybe there are other accomplices we haven't identified yet." We hung up, and I immediately began planning the next steps. In the following hours, I meticulously studied the footage Carlos had sent me, looking for recurring patterns or faces. I needed to be prepared for any contingency. Around 2 p.m., I received a message from Carlos. "I have some troubling news. It seems they have a contact in the Residents Association." The footage shows the woman talking to one of the security guards 3 days ago. That complicated everything. If they had insiders in the condominium, our operation could be compromised. I called Carlos back immediately. "Who exactly in the Residents Association?" "A newly hired security guard, Eduardo Mendez. He started 2 months ago. We're checking his background now." "We need to change the plan," I said, adrenaline starting to kick in. "If they have informants, they might already know we're setting a trap." "What do you suggest?" I thought quickly. "We have to throw the guard off. Have your people show up separately, in plain clothes, like ordinary visitors. No radio chatter near the condominium perimeter." "Understood." "And the meeting location?" "We'll keep it. But be prepared for a last-minute change. I have a feeling they won't follow the script." At 3 p.m., I placed the discreet microphone Carlos had dropped in my mailbox. We tested the communication, and it worked perfectly. The agents were already strategically positioned around the model house, blending in among genuine visitors and gardeners. At 3:40 p.m., I received a text on my phone, "Change of plans. Problems at the office. Meet us at the condominium Central Park at 4:15 p.m. Hannah." Just as I suspected. I showed the message to Carlos through our communicator system. "They noticed something," he commented. "They're changing the location to see if you're alone or being watched. We need to reposition the team without raising suspicions. The park has less coverage, which makes us more exposed. I'm already redirecting some agents. But it's going to be risky. The park has many escape routes." "I'll stick to the plan," I asserted. "It's our best chance of catching them red-handed." At 4:10 p.m., I walked casually to the condominium Central Park carrying an envelope that was supposedly to contain the extortion money. The park was moderately busy, some families with children, an elderly couple, 2 gardeners working in the flower beds. I knew that at least 3 of them were undercover agents. I sat on a bench near the central fountain, a spot with high visibility for both the criminals and our agents. I pretended to check my phone while scanning the area. There was no sign of Hannah, Scott, or Kevin. At 4:20 p.m., just as I was starting to think they had given up, I spotted Hannah walking along one of the park's paths. She was alone and now dressed in casual clothes, jeans, a t-shirt, and a cap. A remarkable transformation that explained how they managed to operate unnoticed for so long. She sat next to me on the bench without ceremony, as if we were old friends meeting casually. "Lovely afternoon," she commented, staring intently at the fountain. "I agree." "I brought what we agreed on," I replied, indicating the envelope. "Excellent. But first, let's take a walk." Her tone was friendly, but her eyes kept scanning the surroundings. "I thought we were going to settle this here," I replied, trying to maintain control of the situation. "Change in protocol," she said, smiling tightly. "Safety first, always." I immediately understood she was testing to see if I was being followed. I needed to improvise without jeopardizing the operation. "Of course, no problem," I agreed, standing up. "Where are we going?" "Just follow that path," she pointed toward a trail that moved away from the busier area of the park. "My colleagues are waiting to finish the paperwork." As we walked, I noticed movement at the edges of my vision. Scott appeared ahead on the path, now dressed in sports clothes and sunglasses. Kevin was positioned strategically near a side exit of the park. They were discreetly surrounding me, probably planning to lead me out of the condominium. "Your colleagues are quite vigilant," I commented casually. Hannah smiled. "Standard procedure. Inspections are a job that makes enemies." We continued until we reached a more isolated area of the park, near a decorative grove marking the condominium's boundary. Scott came up close, with Kevin following just behind. "Everything all right?" Scott asked Hannah. "Almost," she replied, extending her hand. "Could you show me the envelope now, please?" It was time to turn the tables. "Before that, I have a question. In exactly which section of the municipal code did you base this fine?" Because I spoke with the head of the Department of Building and Conduct this morning, and he assured me there isn't any such section 3.7.a. The trio froze for a moment. Hannah recovered first. "It's a recent update to the code," she explained with false confidence. "It's not yet available on the city's website." "Interesting," I replied calmly. Because I personally spoke with the director of the Department of Building and Conduct today, and he assured me there is no municipal zoning inspection in our city. Hannah's expression hardened. Scott stepped closer, his hand sliding toward the back pocket of his pants. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Hannah said, her voice losing its earlier cordiality. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation in a more private location." "Or maybe we should end this farce right now," I replied, stepping back and revealing my federal badge. "Federal agent. You three are under arrest for identity fraud, attempted extortion, and criminal conspiracy." At that very moment, the gardeners and the other visitors revealed themselves, pulling out badges and weapons. Hannah tried to run toward the grove, but she was quickly intercepted by one of the agents. Scott attempted to grab something from his pocket. Thankfully it wasn't a weapon, just a pocket knife, but he was subdued before he could make any move. Kevin, surprisingly, did not resist. He immediately raised his hands and mumbled, "I knew this day would end badly." In a matter of minutes, the three were handcuffed and discreetly led to unmarked vehicles. The operation had been a success, despite the last-minute change in the meeting location. Carlos approached, visibly satisfied. "We got the security guard too. He was trying to escape through the back of the condominium when he learned of your arrest." "Great work," I replied, feeling the relief of all the built-up tension. "What have we learned about them so far?" Hannah Maya is actually Sofia Kovalev, wanted in 3 states for similar frauds. Scott and Kevin have multiple records for fraud and burglary. And the security guard, Eduardo, was their inside informant in the condominium. He was passing on information about residents' routines and security systems, everything. Just as I suspected, I commented, watching the vehicles drive away with the detainees. This is only the beginning. We need to trace all of their connections and investigate every detail. I'm sure they're part of a larger network. We're already on it, assured Carlos. We found a laptop in Sophia's car. Our cybercrime team is analyzing it. Initial findings suggest they had detailed information on at least 30 residences in this condominium. The sun was beginning to set over the park, casting long shadows over the well-kept lawn. In less than 12 hours, we had identified, questioned, and captured a cell of a sophisticated criminal organization that had been terrorizing luxury condominiums for years. They picked the wrong house this time, I remarked, unable to hide a small smile of satisfaction. Definitely, agreed Carlos. Who would have thought that faking a badge to find someone for unauthorized gardening would lead to the downfall of an entire criminal network? The interrogation of the suspects began immediately after the arrest. I watched through the one-way mirror as Carlos led the questioning with Kevin, who seemed to be the weakest link in the group. Look, I'm not the mastermind here, Kevin kept insisting, leaning over the metal table. I just do what I'm told. Sophia is the one with the connections. And who gives the orders to Sophia? Carlos pressed. Kevin hesitated, fear evident in his eyes. I don't know his name. I've never seen him in person. All I know is that he's called the director. In the adjacent rooms, other investigators were working with Scott and Sophia. Scott kept silent, answering only with one-word responses. Sophia, on the other hand, demonstrated a disturbing coldness, almost professional. We need to cross-check the information, I commented to investigator Chen, who was reviewing the preliminary notes. I'm sure there are inconsistencies in their stories. We've already found some, Chen replied. Kevin mentioned a warehouse in North Hills where they store fake documents. Scott denied knowing of any warehouse. And Sophia claims they never keep anything physical, only digital files. At that moment, an officer hurried into the observation room. Agent, we found something on Sophia's laptop that you need to see immediately. We followed the officer to the digital lab, where a forensic technician was working on several screens at once. We managed to access their cloud, the technician explained. We found an encrypted file with details of all operations from the last 3 years. But the most alarming part is this. He opened a document titled Operation Harvest, Final Phase. My blood ran cold as I read the content. It's a coordinated plan, I murmured, absorbing the gravity of the situation. These aren't just random extortions. They were planning something much bigger. The document detailed a scheme to carry out simultaneous burglaries at 12 upscale residences over one weekend, when many homeowners would be away for a charitable event at the condominium's club. The houses had been carefully selected after months of undercover visits by HOA inspectors and other fake officials. This would happen in 3 days, the technician pointed out. On Friday night, during the annual charity ball. How many people are involved? I asked, scrolling through the list of assigned tasks in the document. At least 15 direct operatives, plus logistical support, replied the technician. And check this out, they have informants in 3 other condominiums besides ours. The situation had escalated drastically. What started as a simple approach at my door that morning had turned into the discovery of a highly structured criminal organization. We need to act immediately, I declared. If we only arrest these 3, the others will be alerted and disappear. We have to catch them all at once. I agree, said Carlos, who had just entered the lab. But how? We don't know where to find them. A risky but potentially effective idea began to form in my mind. What if we let their plan proceed? With one crucial modification, we'll be waiting. In the following hours, we set up an unprecedented operation. We kept the arrests of Sophia, Scott, and Kevin absolutely secret, no official records, no mention in regular police communications. For all practical purposes, they simply disappeared from the reports to the rest of the organization. Using the information from the laptop, we identified all 12 target residences and discreetly contacted their owners. We explained the situation and asked for their cooperation, keeping the charity ball running as a lure while tactical teams were positioned at each of the houses. The plan was meticulous, but there was one critical flaw: we didn't know who the director was or where he would be during the operation. "He won't get his hands dirty," remarked Chen. "He's probably somewhere with a perfect alibi, coordinating remotely. Unless..." A sudden realization hit me. What if he's hiding in plain sight? Right at the charity ball? We reviewed Sophia's files again. Among the documents were guest lists from previous events, including last year's ball. The director would need a position that gave him privileged access to the wealthiest residents and their habits. "Look at this," I pointed to a name on one of the past event organizers' lists. Adrian Mercer, who has been the head of the condominium events committee for 5 years. Interestingly, he started exactly when the first incidents of these crimes were recorded in the area. "I'll check his background," Chen replied, already typing on the terminal. Within minutes, we had our answer. Adrian Mercer was a name that had only been created 7 years ago. Prior to that, there was no record of him in any official database. "Bingo," murmured Carlos. "Now we need to reconfigure the operation. We can't just wait by the houses. We need to catch him too." The night of the operation arrived. The charity ball was in full swing in the main hall of the club. While elegantly dressed families socialized and made donations, undercover agents moved discreetly through the area. I was among them, in a rented tuxedo, pretending to be a new resident. Adrian Mercer was exactly as his picture portrayed: a middle-aged man, neatly trimmed grey hair, a rehearsed smile, and a firm handshake. He moved around the hall like a natural host, greeting everyone, complimenting dresses, and commenting on the success of the event. At 10:15 p.m., just as planned, I noticed Mercer checking his watch discreetly and heading toward a side corridor, presumably to make a private call and initiate the operation. I followed him at a distance, signaling to Carlos through the discreet communicator on my wrist: "Target in motion." East corridor. Mercer entered a small meeting room, closing the door behind him. I quietly approached, positioning myself to listen to his conversation. "Team Alpha, start now," he ordered in a low tone. "Team Bravo, await confirmation." That was all the confirmation we needed. I abruptly burst through the door, my badge in hand. "Adrian Mercer, or whatever your real name is, you're under arrest." His expression shifted rapidly from surprise to cold calculation. In a sudden move, he hurled a chair in my direction and bolted for the side window. I dodged the chair, but lost a few precious seconds. Mercer escaped into the club's exterior gardens through the window. I immediately contacted all teams through the communicator: "Suspect on the run. Club gardens. All units, converge." I leapt out the same window, chasing him through the elaborate club gardens. Mercer ran with a surprising agility for his apparent age, showing physical training that a mere event organizer wouldn't have. He headed for the parking lot, where he would probably have a vehicle ready for escape. We couldn't let him get away. He was the centerpiece of the entire scam. "Block every exit from the condominium," I ordered over the communicator as I ran, gradually gaining on him. The parking lot was just a few meters away when Mercer was intercepted by 2 agents posing as valet attendants. He tried to change direction, but I was close enough to catch him. In a final desperate act, Mercer pulled something from the inside pocket of his jacket, a small revolver that he had managed to hide from the metal detectors at the entrance. Before he could fully brandish it, I tackled him, bringing us both to the ground with the help of the other agents who arrived. The revolver fired, the bullet lost in the night. We struggled briefly on the well-manicured lawn until I managed to subdue him with the help of the arriving agents. "Adrian Mercer, you're under arrest for organized crime, attempted qualified robbery, identity fraud, extortion, and attempted homicide," I declared, as the agents cuffed him. Mercer just smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "Impressive, Agent. Really impressive." A week after the arrests, the fake inspector's case, as the press had dubbed it, had been completely unraveled. Adrian Mercer was, in fact, Victor Lansky, an international criminal wanted in 6 countries for sophisticated fraud. He had meticulously built his false identity, infiltrating the local high society to orchestrate a long-term criminal operation. The extent of the organization was far greater than we had initially imagined. Besides the 3 who approached my house and Lansky, another 19 people were arrested, including informants in the residents' associations, security companies, and even a city employee who provided official templates for document forgery. Carlos organized a community meeting at the condominium club, which was packed. Anxious residents were seeking answers about how they had been deceived for so long. "Good evening, everyone," I began, stepping up to the small improvised stage. "I know many of you are confused and concerned by the recent events. I'm here to explain what happened and, more importantly, how we can all protect ourselves in the future." For the next hour, I detailed the criminal operation without revealing sensitive information about the ongoing investigation. I explained how Lansky had meticulously built his fake persona, becoming a respected figure in the community while secretly mapping the vulnerabilities of the condominium. More than 40 residences were targeted for extortion in the last 3 years, I explained. And the final plan involved a coordinated burglary of 12 homes during the charity ball. An estimated loss of millions of dollars was prevented. Faces in the audience alternated between shock and indignation. Many had known Lansky personally, trusted him, even invited him into their homes. "How did we not notice anything?" asked a woman in the front row. "He seemed so normal." "That's precisely the skill of sophisticated criminals," I replied. "They hide in plain sight, cultivating trust while exploiting our vulnerabilities." After the Q&A session, many residents came up to thank me personally. Some admitted that they had been victims of minor extortions but had felt too embarrassed to report it at the time. "We paid $500 to so-called environmental inspectors last year," admitted an elderly couple. "They said our trees were in violation of some obscure regulation. We felt that something was off, but..." "Don't blame yourselves," I reassured them. These criminals were exceptionally convincing. They used official-sounding terminology, flawlessly forged documents, and exploited the natural respect we have for authority. In the following days, I helped implement new security measures in the condominium and its surroundings. We organized workshops on how to verify the authenticity of official credentials and established protocols for residents to confirm the legitimacy of any official visit. The impact of the case extended far beyond our condominium. Other communities in the area adopted similar procedures, and the city set up a hotline for verifying legitimate municipal agents. One afternoon, while finishing up the case reports in my office, I received an unexpected visit from Carlos. "I have news," he announced, placing a folder on my desk. Lansky started talking. In exchange for some sentencing considerations, he's revealing international connections. I leafed through the documents, impressed by the scope of the network. "This goes far beyond what we thought," I commented. "Operations similar to this in at least 6 different states. And the best part, thanks to your intervention, we're dismantling them all before they can vanish," Carlos added. I smiled, feeling the satisfaction of a job well done. Who would have thought that a knock on the door at 7 in the morning would lead to all this? "They really picked the wrong house," Carlos laughed. "A federal agent specialized in organized fraud? Lansky should have done his homework better." The following week, I was invited to speak at the State Condominium Association about the case and its implications for residential security. The story of the fake inspectors had become an important case study on how sophisticated criminals exploit our trust in authority figures. In my garden, where it all began, I planted new rose bushes. Every time I see them, I remember the look of surprise on Sophia's face when I revealed my badge. The flowers, which had been the pretext for the criminal approach, now symbolize something different for me, a reminder that we should question, verify, and never assume that uniforms and badges automatically equal legitimate authority. One quiet afternoon, as I was watering the new plants, my neighbor approached the fence. "Your garden is looking great," he commented. "I heard you were the one who brought down that scam of fake inspectors." "I just did my job," I replied with a modest smile, "Well, now we all sleep a bit better," he said. "And, just to be sure, if any inspector shows up questioning my begonias, I'll call you immediately." We laughed together, but there was an underlying truth in our humor. The community was different now, more vigilant, more united, more aware of the vulnerabilities we used to ignore. That evening, sitting on my porch watching the sunset over the condominium, I reflected on how something seemingly small, a suspicious approach on an ordinary morning, can reveal much larger problems hidden in plain sight. In our pursuit of security and comfort, sometimes we build impressive physical walls while neglecting the more important barriers: healthy skepticism, community vigilance, and the courage to say no when something doesn't feel right. The fake inspectors who knocked on my door that morning expected to find just another victim. Instead, they found the beginning of the end of their criminal operation. Sometimes, justice comes from the least expected places, even from an unauthorized rose garden. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to have access to more stories like this.